Good evening, everyone. My name is Dan Rothschild. I'm the architect for the project with Rothschild Joint Collaborative. Today, I'll be introducing the developers of the project, Jim Pfeiffer and David Ennis, and also our civil engineer and landscape architect, Sean Donnelly from Gateway Engineers. For those of you who may consider this a deja vu, we did have a DAM back in April 4th of 2022. And you may be asking, well, what has gone on since then? And we'll talk about that. But essentially, after this project was reviewed and enthusiastically supported at the DAM, we then were waiting to hear from Pennsylvania Housing and Finance Agency to see if we received tax credits. And that only happened in the early spring of 2023. So when that happened, we celebrated because that's the financing vehicle for the project. We got in touch with city planning and they said, since your DAM was over a year ago, we'd like you to touch base again with the three neighborhood groups through city planning, reintroduce the project, point out any changes that have occurred. And that's why we're certainly here tonight to show you an update and also to see if you have any questions, information, or concerns. First thing I'm going to do is introduce our developers, Jim Pfeiffer with Presbyterian Senior Care and David Ennis. So Jim, if you wouldn't mind just telling a little bit about Presbyterian Senior Care, and then let us know when David should introduce himself. Jim?
Thank you, Dan. It's very nice to be with all of you again today to give you an update on this new development. I'm Jim Pfeiffer, President and CEO of Presbyterian Senior Care. Our organization has been serving Western Pennsylvania for 95 years. We're based here in Oakmont. We have 32 affordable housing communities in Western PA. We've been in that ministry since 1983. And we have several of those projects are also in the city of Pittsburgh. Some we own and some we manage. We've had a partnership with Affirmative Investments for almost 25 years. This will be our 5th project working together with Affirmative, and we're very excited to do this. This project is 5 years in the making. We've had a history, about 30-year history of working with the LGBTQ community here in Pittsburgh. And about a little over 5 years ago, some representatives of that community approached us about developing a community here in Pittsburgh that would be friendly to the LGBTQ senior community. And we began that process and engaged a partnership with Affirmative Investments to help us in that project. We'll be the majority owner of the community, and we'll also provide the property management services once the building's open. And I'll turn it over to David to tell you a little bit about Affirmative Investments.
Sorry. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for having us again to hear our story about our project, which we're very excited about. I've been working in Pittsburgh for about 25 years, as Jim said, working with Presbyterian Senior Care. And Affirmative Investments is a Boston-based affordable housing developer. And we also do economic development projects. And we've been working with the URA for the last 15 years pretty closely. We're very excited to be in Oakland. We're very excited to be building a special community here. And I just want to say that Presbyterian Senior Care does an amazing job working with their residents. I'm about to lose my voice, so I'm going to quit here, but thank you for having us. Apologize.
David, thanks for getting through that. I know you had a sore throat, so I appreciate your involvement.
Thank you. Sorry.
We promise when we'll direct questions, we'll try to answer them first. One of the things that we wanted to point out also is during the community engagement process last year, we did receive letters of endorsement from both OPDC, Oakcliffe, and OBID. And it's just great that everybody's showing up tonight to look at that as well. We didn't go into in the introduction how needed this is. Certainly in the city of Pittsburgh, affordable housing is one of the primary focuses of the administration. The URA's $42 million fund that was just announced. So we all know how desperate we are for affordable housing. To dig a little deeper for this cohort, LGBTQ community has suffered tremendous challenges and prejudice in their housing history. These statistics are from SAGE, which is a national advocacy firm for LGBTQ seniors. And as this population is growing, these are special projects which are both affordable and for this cohort. There are only a few of them in the country, and I think having this in our region, and certainly as the gateway to Oakland, is going to be a very important project. As we got into the design of the project, this is something that we explained a year ago. We wanted to get a real good understanding of the people who may be living here, and we started by doing some history and understanding both the diversity and colorful nature of this cohort. Since then, we've been fortunate to meet with some LGBTQ seniors in roundtable discussions to dig a little deeper into some of the activities and the design of the building. So we've been very fortunate to, in this past year, to continue to do some design thought processes and work with the community. I think everybody's familiar with the site. This is the site coming up off the Parkway, coming up to Craft Avenue. This is that green area that is totally unbuilt at this point. Across the street is the McGee Research Center, and across Craft Avenue is Carlow University. What I want to point out, I actually took this slide from a year ago, and what I'd like to do is just point out where we are right now. So this is the building that we provided a year ago, which is an L-shaped building. And the only thing that's really changed is the return portion of the L. The return portion of the L had a double loaded corridor, and we were able to skinny up the building and just have one unit here. So one of the things that changed between last year and this year is the project got a bit smaller. Last year, we were presenting a 52 unit building, but we are now going forward with a 48 unit building. So what you'll see is this is the site plan that we presented. And in a moment, I'm going to show you the new site plan. And then I'm going to hand it over to Sean Donnelly with Gateway Engineers. So let me go to the next plan. And you'll notice if I flip back and forth here, you can see that the building and the site plan pretty much the same, remain the same. It's just the area in the back that changed. So Sean, I'm going to give it up to you, and I'll try to annotate as you're talking, but take it away, Sean.
Sure, thanks, Dan. Yeah, I do want to talk a little bit about the site plan here. So as Dan mentioned, this is heading up Forbes Avenue with the building development on your left-hand side there as you come into Oakland at the intersection of Craft. And what we're challenged with on this property, and we'll go through in some other slides, is just the topography that we've encountered. So, heading up that Forbes Avenue section is rather steep, but even heading up Craft is also equally as steep. So there's a lot of challenges on the site with relation to topography. In addition to that, too, the way these parcels have been carved out. So I think we'll show some of those slides as well later, how there's multiple parcels on here that sort of limit the ability we have to express what we need on this site. In addition to those challenges, we are at the intersection of a very large volume of traffic there at Forbes and Craft. So we had to acknowledge where our curb cuts and access points would be. So I think if there's anything else on the other thing I want to mention on this slide is this is in the Boulevard Public Realm District. So as Dan mentioned, the building and the long tail end of it there does face the public realm section of the Bigelow Boulevard. Although our access and our ability to visit the site is on Forbes and Craft, we do still represent and understand that it's on the Bigelow public realm. So we do have a portion of our building that is several stories high that does face the Bigelow Boulevard area.
Yeah, I think I want to point out just a couple of ways that the vehicles enter the building, and then we'll go over the main pedestrian entrances. So right over here, where I'm putting the check mark, that is our ground level parking garage. So essentially, as you come up Forbes Avenue in this direction here, you make a turn right into our building. So this is a secure entrance that you'd have to have a fob to get access to. And you also exit out the same curb cut and go up to the top of Forbes Avenue at Craft. So that's where the residents will park. It's, you know, basically parking underneath the building here. But for loading, what happens is we have a one-way in at Craft Avenue. Excuse me, let me redo that. Right where I'm putting the check mark here. So essentially, for loading, we would come in at Craft Avenue, come down this driveway, and we actually have a loading space right here. There's an entrance to the building. I'll get into that in a moment. And then you would exit right where that arrow is and come over here. So because this site is this shape that's a kind of a triangle with a little flag on the end, the building sits within the triangular portion of the site, the L-shaped building, and the vehicular loading is in the little flag area on Craft. The other thing to point out, let me clear this for a moment, is we actually have two entrances to the building. And Sean, why don't you describe the entrance up by Craft? You have a better understanding of that.
Sure. So the entrance up by Craft, we have two ways to access that. One is along the sidewalk along Forbes. We do have an accessible pathway that you could see gives us a direct route and accessible slopes from Forbes Avenue into the entrance of the building. In addition, there's also several parking spaces on that access lot that could be for visitors or whatnot that can come in, and they have an access point through some ramps and steps to get down to Forbes and then back into the same entrance point that we just mentioned for the pedestrians. Secondarily, we do have another entrance on the lower side of Forbes Avenue. It'll take you in. It's adjacent to our parking garage entrance, and that has full access as well directly from Forbes Avenue. At that point, there will be a cut in the sidewalk to get to the building, to the plaza, and then into the building itself.
And the other thing we want to point out is in the back of the building, which is on an upper or the second level of the building, is a courtyard for the residents, and that will allow them to come out. The community room is along this wall here, so the residents can come out and sort of be in a quiet, private courtyard that's shielded from some of the traffic and noise of Forbes Avenue. The other thing we're going to talk about is the corner, and over here, we're on the corner right here. We're going to be showing on the next slide a beautification of that corner that we're calling our rainbow field. And if I can clear this and go to that. You know what, let's start there first. Oh, I'm sorry. So why don't you, Sean, describe the idea behind this beautification?
Sure. So this is something that we looked at through our design process, that we thought this was sort of a left open space. We have a lot of architecture and detail with the building itself and entrances, but there's some opportunity here between Craft and Forbes that we thought we would be able to work with. Like we mentioned earlier, there's some decent amount of topography to deal with there, so it's not something that we would have as available for an open space or whatnot. So we thought we would sort of allow this to act as sort of a living art area, and looked at a palette of plant material that would be able to sort of express what the goals are of the area, and just to kind of show some of the differences in colors as you drove up Forbes and Craft Avenue in sort of the different times of the year. So on the plan here, we sort of have almost a paint by numbers palette where our landscape architectural team put this together showing how the different areas and different levels would be, I guess, respected with the different colors as you drove through the area. In addition, there's some borders of some hard shrubs and some hard edges to sort of define it. So it's just not a massive flower field, but does have some purpose and some geometry to it.
And then we can step back and look at the overall landscaping plan if you just want to go over some of the concepts there too, please.
Sure. So as you drive up Forbes Avenue, we'll have our street trees and some smaller story trees at the entrances to meet those requirements of zoning, but to also provide some buffer between the building and Forbes Avenue. And then same thing will happen as we wrap up Craft. Along the parking and drive aisle area, we have some trees to help, again, just provide some screening from the area. And then finally in the back, what we're trying to do here is with our courtyard, provide some shade, but also blend some vegetation into that existing hillside that's there between our parcel and the slope and the dialysis clinic, so that the landscape kind of fits in with what's been there historically and helps provide the tenants back there with some nice shade and some screening.
And then finally, some of the lighting concepts there, Sean.
Yeah, so we do have, I guess, 3 different unique scenarios here to deal with. So we do have our parking area, which has a certain light fixture. You can see on the slide here, a little higher type of fixture. And we do have the courtyard in the rear, which has another fixture serving its purpose for lighting the courtyard in the back. And then we have a third type of fixture, which will be for the pedestrians trying to manage their way to the facility. So there'll be several areas that would have these pedestrian scale lighting fixtures to help guide people to their end destination.
As you can see, since we met with you a year ago, we've engaged talented gateway engineers who have now added another level of design to the project. We're going to transition now to the building. The building looks strikingly similar to what we showed you a year ago, excuse me. Time flies. I'm going to just point out a few things here in the building. This is the lower entrance area right here. And next to that is the curb cut for the parking that's on the ground level. In this area are the lounges that are on every floor. Every floor of the residence, there's 8 to 10 units on each floor, can get together for socialization. And the colorful nature here is certainly inspired by the colorful nature of the cohort that's going to live here. But even more than that, one of the things that we showed you last time is that because we see this area as, an area that's full of kinetic movement as cars come up here, we tried to use color as a metaphor for the idea of gender. And that is, if you look at it from down in this direction, the building is primarily green. But if you look at these little bump outs that occur every few windows, they're triangular shaped bump outs that on this side have one color, but on the other side have another color. And the concept is, as you go up the Forbes Avenue street, that the building actually changes color. It goes from green to blue. The blue here, as you can see, kind of reaches to the sky. And as a metaphor, as it changes from blue to green, we're thinking about a metaphor of gender. And that is the idea of LGBTQ, that it's not necessarily just binary. And we think that this artful panel is a way to kind of refer and reference the people who will be living here. The other thing I want to point out is there's another entrance here. And as Sean was describing, this is fully wheelchair accessible. to come in. So if somebody was living up here in a unit, they would come downstairs and be able to come wheelchair accessible and then go up to the flat area up at on Forbes Avenue where the business district is. One of the things socially that was just a pleasure to find out when we were meeting with some of the potential future residents, how excited they are to be here adjacent to the Oakland Business District, cultural institutions, educational institutions. They were very fired up to try to be good neighbors and perhaps even entertain lectures and guests from the surrounding institutions from an educational and learning standpoint. We have a few more slides. This slide is going over the materials of the building. They're very substantial. We have a brick that's sort of a variegated gray palette. We have colorful panels of a cementitious material. What we're also showing here are projects that we've done in the past that have used similar materials. So this is a project that we did on the north side that's also very colorful. We're going to have some metal panel around the main entrances. This is a project we did in Braddock that used metal panel. There's also going to be some metal siding on the rear of the building. And then one of the things I'm going to go back and show that we are entertaining some exterior artwork along Forbes Avenue. And we're going to be using large format vinyl building wrap to do some of those graphics. I'm going to point that out. Went over that a little fast. So this is a view at the main entrance over here. You can see right off the sidewalk. This is the entry into the parking garage. But one of the things that we're interested in doing is along the walkway is to have these murals that are interwoven into the architecture and also comes around a corner here. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to be contacting local LGBTQ artists in a limited competition to provide ideas for what that mural would be. And we have been talking to the Office of Public Art, who's a local nonprofit who knows how to run these processes. We're also thinking of doing the same thing with the artwork that's visible up here on in the lounges. So in this wall of the lounge, we consider this sort of a 3-story piece of art that would sort of kind of relate perhaps to the artwork on the ground floor. We see this potentially as 2 different artists, but we're going to be trying to entertain art proposals from local artists for those 2. Just to finish up, this is an image of the building at night. And one of the symbols that we were trying to use was that we want this project to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion by being like this warm and welcoming light, like a lantern. And the idea that at night, the community lounges here would kind of glow as a welcome to the neighborhood and showing that Oakland is a diverse, welcoming neighborhood, that the lantern was this image that we always came back to. So at this point, it's 6 o'clock, and Christian, I want to turn it back to you to moderate questions, concerns, and we'll certainly be taking notes. So thank you for your time. We appreciate it.
Great. Thank you so much, everyone from the applicant team for that presentation. We will move on to some questions and want to be able to hear from folks. Looks like we do have a hand raised. We'll start with a hand and then we'll get to some questions in the chat. So let's go to Mavis Rainey, I believe, and let me I'll let you take the stage.
Thanks, Christian. Hi, everyone. I do have a question. This is Mavis Rainey with the Oakland TMA. For the entrance to the parking garage for the tenants of the site, they're going to exit out of the parking garage onto Forbes Avenue. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, they would come out and make obviously a left turn.
Okay. And they're entering obviously the parking garage via Forbes as well, correct?
Yes, and I could, with this light right here, Mavis, there's a left turn in, and then they come left turn out.
Okay.
Does that make sense? It's very similar to what Skyview did, if you're familiar with that.
Okay. Yeah, I'm curious, any idea about the potential number of vehicles coming in and out of the parking facility?
Yeah, that's a good question. So Presbyterian Senior Care has a long history of understanding in affordable housing how many of the residents own cars, because they have to register their cars in order to park. So typically what they find is somewhere around 25% on average in their city holdings own cars. And a lot of that has to do with the amount of mass transit that's around. One of the things I forgot to mention was the new bus rapid transit that's being designed. The stop is right catty corner from the Craft entrance. So this is a site that has great mass transit. So if you do the math, 48 apartments, 24, about 12 residents may be parking here. And obviously there may not be going in and out every day. So this would be a very light use of the parking garage.
Okay, thank you. Because I with Skyview, one of the things that they did, which was great, is they encouraged the use of public transportation.
Yeah.
Providing tenants with bus passes, things like that. Also, too, given that left-hand lane on Forbes, not far from the entrance to the parking garage, you actually have traffic exiting off of the Boulevard of the Allies into Forbes Avenue, traveling at a fairly high rate of speed. So I was very curious and concerned about the potential conflict, especially for vehicles leaving the parking garage onto Forbes Avenue up to Craft.
Sure. Hey, Mavis, I have a question for you. When I mentioned Skyview, I want to be a little more clear. We're 48 units of age-restricted affordable housing. I don't know how many units Skyview is.
Oh yeah, they're totally different. I know. I just appreciate you mentioning public transit and the encouragement for tenants. Do you know if access is going to be coming into the facility at all?
Yeah, they'd be coming off of Craft though. That little loading area that we talked about. And what's nice is in that upper entrance, we have a window where residents can wait in the lobby and they can see access pull up pretty much right to their door. So we're excited about that. I can tell you how excited the residents were for the mass transit because a lot of them, like I said, don't own cars, but being on Forbes Avenue at the entrance to Oakland is just like pie in the sky for them.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mavis.
Great, thank you. We'll go to one question in the chat and then we'll move back to some of the hands raised. So one from the chat says, will any of the grounds or building be open to the public? Will there be any meeting areas available to the public?
So that's a very good question. The Rainbow Field, which is up at the corner, is open to the public, basically. It should be something of beauty. We know UPMC, even though they own this property, they did a very nice job from a landscaping standpoint. I think the Rainbow Field that Sean described is taking it to the next level. As far as use of the building, hey, Jim, I'm going to turn that over to you. You have, obviously, from an operations standpoint, a better understanding of how that works.
We don't see any public access to this building. Obviously, we will invite groups and activities to be a part of it. Security will be a significant concern for us in this building. Just based on historical issues that the LGBT community has experienced. So as Dan mentioned, I think public access will be limited to that corner. We will not see any, uninvited access into the building except for the groups, visitors, and others.
Great, thank you for that. And I think we'll go to a hand raised, I believe, Elena, if you want to go ahead.
Thank you. I would like to know what the new timeline is.
We're so excited about that we could finally answer that. It's been hard this year, just keeping our fingers crossed. So with PHFA, we'll be submitting information to them in mid-July. And then they have a time period to review technical information. If all goes well, and we want all to go well, we want to be under construction in October, November, something like that. We would do it as soon as we can, but the building should take about 14 months to be under construction. So that's, David, Jim, I'm not sure if we can get any closer to that, but I think that's the timeline that we discussed. Do you agree?
I think that's correct. I mean, we're actually working with lenders and investors right now, and we'll have our drawings by midsummer and construction pricing. So I think October, November is a good timeline.
Great. And my other question is, of course, how many visitor spaces are there now?
So the visitor
Parking.
space,
Mhm.
yeah, there are 3 visitor spaces out on Craft Avenue, but there's also the possibility when a resident has a visitor that we can arrange for them to come into the garage, because we don't think the garage is going to be full.
All right. And what are your next steps, meeting wise, permits wise, anything we're supposed to be at?
Thank you, Elena. So one of the things I didn't mention, I apologize. After we met with the DAM in April, we did go to the zoning board and we received a few minor variances in June. Next step will be a planning commission hearing that has not yet been scheduled. We did go to CDAP, if you're familiar, those who aren't, that's the Contextual Design Advisory Panel. We had a meeting with them last week, which went very well. So we'll be advertising, through Christian and his group when the planning commission meeting is, but that we should schedule that soon. We'll let you know.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming tonight.
My pleasure.
Great, thank you. I think we'll now move to a question in the chat. There was a question about the reason why the number of units was reduced. You may have touched on that, but maybe clarify the rationale there.
Yeah, I did not clarify it, so that's an excellent question. When you win these affordable housing tax credits, there's something called cost containment that PHFA is, very focused on, and that is, with this amount of money that's being granted, buildings have to be very efficient. And what we found with the difference between 52 and 48 is the tail of the building was really a way to save some money and to be more efficient. We know that affordable housing is a great need in our community. And one of the things at one of our meetings with the seniors, they were saying, this is great, where's your second building? Because they know what the need is. So it was primarily something from cost containment that went from 52 to 48. It didn't necessarily change the design of the building from a public standpoint. It was something in the rear yard. So in a nutshell, that's the answer to the question.
Great, thank you for that. And that may actually tie into another question that I'm seeing in the chat is, will the building grow taller if there is more demand in the future?
No, the building is not meant to add additional stories. So it's always going to be this size.
Sounds good. A few more questions I'm also seeing in the chat. Question about the width of Forbes Avenue sidewalk, where the building approaches the sidewalk. I'm not sure if you have a number there.
It matches what's there now, I believe. Sean, I don't know the answer to that. Is it 6 feet or 8 feet? I forget. Do you know the number?
I do not know the number. I believe it's 8 feet, but do not know.
It's a pretty wide sidewalk. So we're maintaining the width that's there. We can get back to Christian on that, or maybe Sean during the meeting, you can look that up.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll get back to you on that at the meeting. Sean will look it up.
Sounds good. But to your point, the project wouldn't be providing any additional sidewalk space.
No, the only additional paving we have is the entry plaza area, which gives a little relief. We set the, as you can see in this rendering, we set the doors back to give some space. And in the upper entrance, the same way, we had that wheelchair accessible kind of zigzag plaza. So we wanted to make sure that people felt that they can approach the building and not right on the sidewalk.
Sounds good.
And I did get it. It's just under 8 feet. Varies a little bit here and there as it runs up the street, but we're holding it just about 8 feet.
It's pretty wide. Thanks, Sean.
Thank you. And we'll go back to Mavis with her hand up.
Sorry, quick question. The image that's on the screen now, where the trees are along Forbes, is there additional lighting to kind of light that area?
You know, we're not allowed to, it's funny. I wanted to uplight the trees, but you can't do that with the city's dark sky component. What's not rendered here, Mavis, are the existing, this is like poetic license, I guess. There are existing pole lights, really nice ones, going down Forbes. So we did not put them in the rendering, but obviously those lights will stay. So the city's lights are there. I could go to a Google Earth shot and show you that, but I'm sure you're familiar with them as well.
Yeah, that was part of the Boulevard of the Allies Bridge project. The poles, yeah.
They're beautiful lights. They're really nice lights. But we took them out because we thought it would be more dramatic. That's like an artist's poetic license, but they're there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Don't see any additional comments coming in the Q&A. And I don't believe we have any hands raised. So with that, I'll give one final chance. If anyone has a final question or comment. All right, well, then, oh, okay, one just came in. We'll go back to Elena.
I just want to say, welcome to Oakcliffe.
Elena, thank you very much.
Thank you. We're very excited to have this location. I mean, it's unbelievable that we were able to secure the site, and can't wait to be part of the Oakland community.
Sounds great. Yeah, want to thank everyone for their time and contributions. As we heard, it looks like the applicant will be moving ahead to Planning Commission hearing, and that is scheduled to be determined. So definitely be on the lookout for that upcoming meeting, and then the project moving forward after that. So thank you so much for taking the time for this portion of the process. And with that, just I will say good night to everyone.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you. Take
Appreciate
care,
it.
everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.